Hey, hey, you. You want to know what's on the menu tonight? Well, we're pushing away the steak and eating the celery sticks with Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood. Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood is developed by Cyanide Studios and published by Nacon. I think that's how you say it. But basically, it's out for pretty much everything except for the Nintendo Switch, and it came out on February 4th, 2021. It is an action role playing game, single player, and it's something else. But we're going to get into it in a minute. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this game off to Patrick. Patrick, what did you think of Werewolf Earthblood?
Well, I actually enjoyed this one. At first, I didn't think so. I was going to like it. It's kind of it feels old to me. It doesn't feel like a new game. That's what I'm going to say. It feels old. Um, when I first started playing, I'm like, this is kind of cool. It's got some interesting elements in it. I would swear if Altered Beast was made today, it would be similar. So, um, I you know I found that it has some cool mechanics. You can turn it into a wolf, you can turn it into a werewolf, or you can run around as your human Kahan, I think is what his name is, or whatever the main character that you play. Um, so it's got some neat aspects. It 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 tends to play really well. I mean, it looks old, so maybe that has something to do with it. I know it's on the Unreal Engine 4, but it seems like it's an old game. I don't know why to me, but it just seems like it's older. The third person view, I like that in this style game. So the third person works really well for it because you can see when you shift into a wolf and you get to run around as a wolf and you move a little quicker. Um, so I enjoyed it. I didn't get as much time with it to finish it, but I did get to play quite a bit of it, and I actually liked it. Um, there's lots of cool little stories that you can do on the side that aren't actually part of the main game, the main story, that you just have to keep talking to the tree that's in the town and stuff like that. Um, Shane, what did you think of this one?
That's probably not the best question to ask me because I this game used came out in 2021. It felt more like 2001. It's I did not enjoy it whatsoever. The mechanics are completely terrible in my opinion. The graphics are severely dated. Um, the concept is really cool though. I do like the concept of the whole werewolf thing. It's just man, it's severely they messed up on the execution. There's so many things that they should have done and could have done better. Um, the game's just broke, or not broke, excuse me, flawed. I didn't experience a lot of glitching or anything like that. It's just a bad game. Great concept, terrible execution. I think uh, I think somebody should have stepped in and say, "Look, guys, you know what? If we brought the graphics up to at least the 360 era, maybe the Xbox One era, the game would be better. Uh, the controls they took getting used to, but they're not good. I do like the whole flipping to the werewolf, the regular wolf, and then the guy Kahal or however you pronounce his name. That's cool, but it doesn't make the game enjoyable whatsoever, at least for me. Russ, I believe me and you're probably in the same ballpark on this one.
All right, so Russ is back. He's from the year 2011, and that's where I played Werewolf Earthblood. I am pretty much sure that this game was made and was put in some dungeon or something and just pulled out and just tried to basically put it into a 2021 package. This is a terribly acted, terribly graphical game. Um, I'm not. I usually find some anything positive to say about a game, but this one is really difficult. I mean, it was fun ripping limbs off. I mean, especially after a long day at work, just getting in there and ripping some limbs off. I did not play near as much as I had actually hoped um, on this game, just for the simple fact of like, just this isn't a spoiler. The very first boss, I think that I could act more convincingly that I lost my keys than this guy lost his wife. That's all I have to say about that. It was really, really tough to enjoy this game. And normally I kind of gravitate towards these action games. Games like Odyssey. Even though Odyssey is open world, the combat style is very similar in the sense of that third person over the top view. What was the point of Wolf other than to sneak? And then just the human form was I don't know. I really struggle with saying something positive about this game, but I'll talk a little bit more about it later. But my very first impressions and even my impressions after 5 hours was Half-Life 2 was a better game than this, and it was made many years ago. Nick, what about you, man? What you got?
Yeah, this game, I did finish it. I completed it. This game is not very good. It really isn't. The only thing that's really good about it is that, well, okay, the one aspect of the game that passes somewhat is turning into a werewolf. That part is fun, but it's only fun for a while, and it's only fun for like half of the game because it gets very repetitive. Having beaten it, this game is very long. It should have ended. I thought it ended like two or three times playing through it before I actually got to the end. And fighting as a werewolf, it's fun, but you find yourself, to give some context, like the sneaking part. There's a lot of sneaking throughout this game, and the sneaking part doesn't seem to. It doesn't work, because when you go into the different areas to sneak, you have like regular people that just like regular humans, and then you can take them down by sneaking behind them and taking them out. Not very long into the game, they introduce these big burly humans. Well, those guys you cannot take out by sneaking around. At least I couldn't figure out. If there is a way, I don't know it because I couldn't. I went up behind them and everything, and even shot him with a crossbow because you do get a crossbow as a human, and it doesn't seem like no matter if I shot them with a crossbow or if I snuck up behind them, it doesn't really matter what I did. It would not take them out. So once they detect you, you're basically going to have to go into werewolf mode anyway and turn to a werewolf and beat them all down. So you might as well just not sneak whatsoever. You might as well just go in there, turn a werewolf, and beat them all down because that's about the best you can do. The only thing that really gives you an advantage with sneaking is they do have in every arena where there's enemies, they have these doors that are basically respawn doors. They basically spawn enemies out once you defeat the enemies in the room. There's little control panels next to them. If you disable the control panel, at first I thought it meant that enemies wouldn't come out of those, but they still come out of them. What actually happens is the enemies that come out of those areas will have less health when they come out. So that's the advantage of destroying those control panels is you'll still have enemies come out of them, but the enemies that do come out will have like half health or something like that. So they're easier to take down. But basically there's no point. You might as well just go in there, werewolf it, and then get out. So sneaking has no point. The crossbow that they give you, worthless. Uh, it doesn't do anything. You can take a few people out, but again, you're going to have to fight the whole crew and all the respawns that come in. So what's the point? And then they give you bottles of whiskey, which do have an advantage, which we'll get into later. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, having beaten this game, the story, it, it makes sense as far as what's going on, but it's really unimportant. Like, you don't really care about this guy, the protagonist you play, and everything that's going on. It doesn't really matter to you, and you're never going to find a point where you feel invested in him or in the people and the things that are going on, because like Russ said, the voice acting is horrible. I mean, the main character, his wife dies at the very beginning, which was Russ was talking about. He's like, no, you know, and it's like, come on, man, your wife just died, and you're just like, oh
We
man,
both know Shane, while flushing the toilet, has screamed sadness harder than that guy did about his wife dying. We all know
pushed
that.
hard for that.
I mean, it's like that. But like, what about the name of the group that you're going against? It's Endron?
Enron.
So it's like N
Yes.
and Ron with a big D in the middle of it. Take
Yeah,
that for what it's
Endron.
worth. I mean, it was just like, come on, like Enron, Endron. I mean, can't you at least come up with a better word?
It's basically a group of hippies taking on Enron, which Enron is a oil manufacturing company, destroying the earth, taking the oil and the precious minerals out, and they're trying
It's
to
an
fight them
unfathomable story.
because it's basically
Oh,
the
no, it can
corporation
happen, man.
versus the tree huggers. That's
you're
pretty
an
much what the
eco-ter-
game is.
You're an eco-terrorist werewolf. I mean, come on. That's what you
All
are.
right,
basically.
but you guys are forgetting the only redeemable portion of
I was
this
waiting for this.
Mm,
and we all
Come
know, we all
on, Shane.
know,
yeah.
you got to give it to big one. Ric
It's
Flair.
Ric Flair.
You have Ric Flair with a mullet, and his shirt never buttons.
And he's the alpha. He's the alpha werewolf.
And he is the
Yeah.
alpha, exactly.
You got Ric Flair in this game. That's the only thing that works for this game is Ric Flair.
Except for he never got a woo out of him. So I mean,
no, you don't.
No.
get
I don't know if it wasn't
No,
redeeming.
no woo.
I
no,
would-
it was
How?
woo-less.
I will admit, yeah, not even a howl. See, that would have been substituted. I will admit that the voice acting was atrocious in this game. It was horrible. I mean, but that's not why I liked it. I thought it was fun because in the beginning I tried to stealth. I'm like, how many? Because the maps are segregated into sections. So you come into a section, there's guys, there's little cubbies that only the wolf can fit through. So because you sneak with the wolf, you can sneak as the guy, but you sneak mostly as the wolf. And the wolf can kind of sneak in and out of these little cubbies, or these air vent shafts is what they are, to go around the room and sabotage the reinforcement doors, as Nick was saying. And I found that, in the beginning, I'm like, I can clear out a whole room stealthing. And I don't mean like go in and go out without killing anybody. I would go in and I'd be like, okay, which guys are looking at each other? And I'll snipe one of them with the crossbow, and then I'll head in the vent shaft and just hide out while they wander around looking for who killed them. And then I'll just start sneaking up behind them and killing them all. But after about 2 missions, that got tiring, and so I eventually just did what you said. I didn't even care about sabotaging the doors. I just ran in the room and just hulked out on them, turned into a werewolf right off the bat, and was like, all right, come get some. To me, that was
Ric
fun.
Flair on him.
It's just a button
You went Ric
mashing.
Flair on him, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a button mashing like attack. Just that's all you're doing is just button mashing and jumping in there and just tearing into everybody, and that's the fun part. The story was horrible. The voice, like I said, the voice acting was horrible. The main character was like, I don't know. It reminded me of, even though that guy looks like Ric Flair, it reminded me of watching the WWE soap opera. With your Stone Cold Steve Austin. So that's what it kind of reminded me of. But I found the combat fun as the werewolf, but outside of the werewolf, it was boring and just kind of meh. So I found myself running to become, I'd find the whiskey bottle so that you can power up. But, because the werewolf has all kinds of cool abilities that you can get by speccing your points that you get in, the spirit points that you get in for absorbing the plants, the spirit plants.
Yeah. Right. Sniffing all
You
the
go
plants.
through the game sniffing
Yeah.
the
You gotta
plants.
sniff all the plants
plants.
and the mushrooms.
Oh,
You're a
yeah, I
werewolf
feel
and
good.
you upgrade by plants.
Yeah.
The,
I mean-
the funny thing is,
You're-
it's like
you're
something
a vegan.
serious happens
You're a
in the
vegan.
game. Like I'm playing through the game and something serious happens. Like someone dies or whatever, and they're like, "You need to hurry up, Cahal." That's the main guy's name. I'm like, "Okay, hold on, I gotta sniff these plants real quick.
Yeah.
I gotta sniff the spirit out of that plant.
I gotta sniff the spirit." out of
And then
these
and you
plants.
use that essence to level up your abilities, and then you can
Right.
also enrage at once you build up so much. When you're fighting, you build up so much power and you enrage, and then the enrage abilities are pretty awesome. And the werewolf has like 2 stances. They have like the big like
Yeah,
just
the
like-
agile stance
Agile
and the
and
heavy
the-
stance.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I
the
found
game
that
has
part of the game
every
fun.
trope in it. Yeah, but the game has every '99, 2002 trope in it. I mean, the action, your Altered Beast reference was pretty well dead on. Because it was like an upgraded version of Altered Beast, except for instead of left and right, you can move 360 now. Ooh, I mean, it's not a good game. I mean, the character designs of it are from late '90s, early 2000s. The voice acting, like you guys were saying, is holy crap. Where'd you get these homeless people from? It's just awful. The storyline is nonsensical. I mean, like Russ is pointing out, werewolves getting a boost off a plant. That makes sense in every movie you've ever seen involving a werewolf. You ever seen him sniff a plant? Maybe smoke a weed, but never sniff just a plant. I mean, it just, there's nothing about this game is more fun to talk about than it is to play. I mean, the character designs are awful. God, there's so much that's not redeeming. If it wasn't for Ric Flair, I don't think I could have got past the intro.
I mean,
I never listened to any of the talk.
I'll give
after
Patrick
10
some
minutes.
credit in the fact of like, yes, it is kind of fun to go in and Hulk out and like rip off arms and stuff like that. But again, it's like a percentage of fun over the overall game. I mean, I guess if it was like, maybe you just get in and you go and do that, but you have to listen to the horrible storyline before you get to go in to do that. And so I guess that was just kind of it's just, the game feels very ancient to me. It feels very, I mean, especially Patrick, considering him being a graphic snob and everything. I guess maybe that ripping off arms, like maybe he was like, I wish these graphics, because it's a Series X game. I mean, that's a little gut wrenching in my opinion. Of course, we don't give ratings, and I mean, I think I'll be the first one to venture out and say, it's definitely not worth that price point. It's definitely not worth that price point. I should say price point at all. I mean, this is a $29.99 summer sale game. This is nowhere near a $50 game. Man, that was just frustrating. I think it was my turn to buy too. Son of a. But
You,
Did
you only
anybody
got
get
stuck
to
with $50 though.
Yeah. Did anybody get to the point where the worm, right? So just a little,
Big
just
worm,
so the
big
viewer
worm.
knows, yeah.
Big
The
worm?
Enron people, their deity or whatever is the worm, and then yours is whatever forest
wild.
spirit you want to think of. You
Gaia.
have
Chia
Wild.
pet.
Gaia.
the Gaia,
Yeah.
right? So, did anybody get to where the main enemies get infected with the worm? They get
That
the
is where I'm
worms.
at right now.
Okay,
I think it's
so
right before me.
They got worms.
the
Werewolves and
the
worms.
werewolf part is fun to an extent. It gets very repetitive because as you start to get in more and more of the levels, it's rinse and repeat. I found myself, now everybody may have their own setup, and Shane or Patrick had mentioned this about the skill points that you can add in. Well, I found myself only using basically 3 abilities. I mean, there's like 6 abilities in total um, for your werewolf, depending on, there's like 4 for the agile and 4 for the heavy. 1 is repeating, which is the health boost. But there's 3 basically, so I guess 6 in total that you can have on your agile and your heavy. And I found myself only fighting each fight the same way, and that was going heavy, because even though agile is fast and quick, heavy hits hard. So the enemies would group up anyway, so it felt like being agile
Yep.
didn't make a difference. It was just basically, I'm going to go heavy and I'm going to hit them. And then on my abilities, I would use, there's a slash attack that does like 4 slashes and then a big slash. I would use that and the health boost. He had another one on heavy, which I hardly ever used. I can't remember. It was like a stomp or something. And then when you upgrade in your points, there's one that there's the elder abilities, which are at the very bottom, which are 4 points apiece. So I put one into the heavy, which is the earthquake or whatever, and basically it's a big stomp. And those 3 abilities, the health boost, the attack frenzy, and the earth stomp, were the only 3 I ever used. I would just go, as soon as I went werewolf, I'd go switch to heavy, because you start out in agile. I'd switch to heavy, use the slashing until I had enough rage points, because you acquire rage points as you attack, and then use the Earth Stomp. If my frenzy was up, because you can go frenzy, there's a purple bar that raises up as you get attacked and you attack and stuff like that. Then you can go frenzy, which you're pretty much almost bulletproof at that point. And you're really fast and you hit hard. So as soon as that came up, I just hit that off and just start knocking people out. And I found myself just basically repeating that same uh, pattern no matter what fight I got into. It was that same pattern over and over. So that got really boring. I felt like there was nothing else. The agile mode, to me, didn't seem like it was worth using. And it was just really, I could just go around with heavy and just destroy everything in that mode. So
Yeah. Yeah, see, I stuck with agile mode, and I would say the same thing. I used the same three abilities. I used the jump, which damaged everything around, and then I would
Ground
use the
pound.
dash, and because the dash would actually grab an enemy on the way through, and so then you could like beat somebody else with them, throw them against the wall. But I found it was really good against the big guys, the shielded guys, and then the guys with the stun batons, and even the mechs. Because if you did a dash attack at a mech, he would like plant on the front of the mech, and then you could just whack, 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 and then jump away. And I would just rinse, repeat, and do the same thing. I would heal up as I needed it, you know. So I found I was
did
using the same three
exact
abilities.
thing.
Yeah,
Yep,
it was the
exact same
dash
thing.
attack.
So,
I wish
Nick
this
did
game-
the Hulk wear or the
yes,
Wolf Hulk.
the Wolf Hulk.
And I did the what was it,
He's
Nightwing or Night?
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say like Night Wolf. We'll call it the
Yeah.
Night Wolf and
Just
the Hulk
like
wear or the
charge
werewolf.
in and charge out
Yeah.
is all I was doing.
I wish this game was
But-
just levels that you go through being the werewolf. Like the whole
Yeah, I
time you're
was
the
thinking
werewolf,
about
and you
that
just go
too.
through like stages, like an old school like retro where you just go through stages, and it kind of tells a story, maybe like a little cutscene in between stages or something. I think that would have been a lot cooler. I think the stealth parts could have just been thrown out completely because they really don't work that well, and they,
No.
especially towards the middle to the end of the game, they're practically useless at that point. There's
I
too
used
many
it for
big-
traversal. The wolf for
Well,
traversal because he moved faster
Yeah, you
than
can,
anybody else.
and there's also
And-
like certain skill points that the stealthing doesn't work too, because sometimes you'll be behind a barrier and the enemy will see you anyway.
Well,
I
I
even
I,
as the
I,
wolf.
spec
behind
I
anything.
spec'd into the ability to where you could go kind of
Camouflage with the wolf? Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
I would still get
It only
spotted.
works. It only works if you got to read the tooltips on it. You have to go into like the penumbral view, and then coming
Right.
out of the penumbral view, you'll be red colored, and you can walk. And it takes they don't like not ever see you, but their sight bar fills up slower, so you'll be like red unless you run. If you run,
Yeah.
it immediately takes off the camouflage. So you have to like slow walk it as the wolf.
But I mean,
but you're
sometimes they would
completely
see
red.
me even in that mode, because I remember I go in the red mode
Mhm.
like you're talking about. Even through barriers, they would be like, "Oh," and I'm like, "I'm behind a barrier in the camouflage mode. What the heck?" And they would still see me.
Right.
So I was like, especially towards, and that's really like at the beginning, you can definitely stealth, right?
Mhm.
But when it gets to the
Yeah,
middle
first
part, when
two
it gets to the
levels.
worm part, when the worms start coming in, when everybody gets worms, from that part
They all
on, it
start
seems
rubbing
like
their butt across the carpet.
yeah, it seems like that from that part on, it's harder to stealth, and you're really just kind of going in and just fighting people as the werewolf, pretty much.
You're the
really-
wolf. That's funny. You're the wolf, and you're trying to get rid of people with worms.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised that they didn't have like a heart guard.
Yeah.
Little flea
This
collar.
game brought to you by Heartguard.
Yeah, I know that was horrible.
Heartguard suppositories. And you're a
bad.
werewolf.
They,
Just go
they
in
all they're just marching all the wolves into the camp, and they got the heart guard, and they're like,
There
all
you
right,
go.
just spray the fur, put a couple drops on it, rub it in.
Yeah.
Next.
there. No, no.
That's
no.
how they
You get
vaccinate the
you get
wolves.
you get the
I mean,
suppository.
we're sniffing
Heartguard.
pets and we're like camouflaged red. So I don't know what else to tell you about this game, guys. I mean,
Yeah.
This game would have been better off if they'd have got rid of the stealth completely, like you said. Honestly, I would have rather have seen them go first-person view with the action elements of it, and then you can just choose to go into werewolf mode, and then just ravage. Because you're forced into werewolf mode. As soon as there's any action, that's it. You're werewolf. I mean, it's just not used right. It
Right.
should have been
or like
an
Arkham
option
Knight
to
type
go.
stuff, like Batman Arkham Knight stuff, like that. I
Yes.
think would have been better. Like that kind of like gameplay would have been so much better here because I feel like I wasted the first 3 hours of 5 hours of gameplay in some type of cutscene or talking to four people that really don't matter, and then going into the mission and having to stealth for the first 3 to 5 minutes or whatever it is, and then the big fight, and then the next room, and then the next room, and then the boss. And it was like, I would have much rather just been like showing up, busting through the doors as Wolf Hunk, and just be like, let's do this. I don't know. I mean, I see what Patrick's likes are about it. Not that I necessarily agree, because it just did get kind of repetitive, but I think it is what it is.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
repetitive, and that's the main thing. But being the werewolf was fun. I think if they would have structured this game a little bit differently, like I said, and like Shane said, if they got rid of the stealth parts, and then the Batman Arkham thing would have been really cool, like an open world environment where you can just form into the wolf, or maybe you're just the wolf the whole time, or maybe you could just form into the wolf whenever you want to, because you can't really necessarily form into the werewolf whenever you want to in this game. It's only when you're in the combat areas, and then you can hit the right bumper to become a werewolf, or if you get shot or hit or something, then you mash the button to become a werewolf. But like that open-ended kind of open RPG style might have worked a little bit better for this than the stage kind of small little sandbox that they give you to work in, um, and where they try to incorporate stealth. I don't think this game. I don't know. I mean, being a werewolf and everything like that, like stealth doesn't. Maybe if you're the wolf that you can turn into, but when you're the human and going through this area, I don't know. It just didn't work out so well. I think that part of it could have been gotten rid of, and that might have helped it. It may have not have. I don't know, but it was hard to get by.
Yeah, and
yeah.
and
There's
some of
so
the
many flaws.
yeah, and some of the dialogue was weird. And what I mean by weird is it almost made it feel like you had choice when you talked to some of the people, because it kind of reminded me of the Mass Effect style chat wheel that would come up, and you're like, okay, I want to say this to them. You got like a couple of choices, like 2 to 4 choices when you're talking, and you're like, okay, if I don't ask about this, is it going to affect that? But I played through a couple of times on one of those, and it never made a difference what I said. So I'm like, I'm just going to be the jerk off werewolf who's going to bite people's heads off, you know? Threaten, like when, especially like early in the game, when you meet up with the weapons dealer guy in his office when he's by himself, and you go in and you start talking to him, you have an option to intimidate him or to basically try to, find out all the information you can about why he's got all the silver bullets in stock and all that stuff. And you can either intimidate him by threatening to bite his head off, or, and neither chat decision made any difference in the game. So
That was a weird part too that I didn't understand too, because I do love, I thought that maybe it would change something like what happened with the wife, or something like but it didn't matter. It didn't matter one bit.
Yeah, the only thing I saw it does is if you do something like that where you threaten them or they make you mad, it will up your rage meter.
Yeah.
So when you go into a fight, you have a rage meter, which that allows you to do your abilities. Every bar on the rage meter allows you to do an ability. That's down in the lower left. If you want to do the elder abilities, I think it's 2 bars to do one of those. So you can either use the whiskey, which is around there, to fill that up before a fight, or if you're intimidate or interrogating somebody, you could possibly fill that bar before the next fight. But the one thing you want to make sure or remember is that before you go into a fight, if you know a boss fight's coming up, use all the whiskey you have, because
Yeah.
whenever you're no matter where your rage meter's at, it always empties when you're done with the fight, no matter what type of fight, either a boss or just regular enemies. So don't be afraid when you go into a fight to use the bars that are available in your rage meter, or even if your frenzy comes up, go ahead and use it, because that's going to go back down to 0 as well when you're done with the fight. So use all those abilities as much as you can during any fight, because they're just going to go back down to 0 and you're going to have to build them back up again. So especially during a boss fight, if you have 3 whiskey bottles on you, drink them all down before you go, and that'll help you a lot in those boss fights.
yeah, because you can always refill. There's like tons of places, and it's like any typical game. Right before you're about to see a boss, there's almost like a tray of whiskey and a tray of arrows for your crossbow. I'm like, oh, there's a thing of a bunch of whiskey. I better chug this one and grab 3 more, you know,
Yep.
because you can only hold so many. And same thing with arrows, you know, you can only hold so many. And so you're like, okay, something's about to happen because I'm restocking on all these things. So it's not one of those things where you're saving it, you know, to hopefully I never use, you know, most games, I don't know about you guys, but most games like this that have like consumables, I end up hoarding the consumables and never using them,
Yeah.
thinking I'm gonna use this later when it gets really tough. And I end up ending the game with like a stack of 100 of them. But this game doesn't let you do that. You can have 3 of each, you know, or you can have 4 arrows
You
and
can
3
have
whiskey
3.
bottles without doing any specking. So yeah,
Right.
I found that was kind of funny. I'm like, oh, about to go into a decent battle. Better drink my whiskey.
Yeah, I was
Oh, yeah.
hoarding my whiskey bottles
Vegan
too.
yeah.
And I was
Vegan
like, oh, wait.
werewolves. Yeah, vegan
Why?
werewolves with alcohol problems.
Yep,
That's,
you're an alcoholic
Yeah.
vegan.
That sniffs plants.
Let's
too.
sniff
Don't forget
plants.
that.
Plants.
And mushrooms and
Yeah.
statues.
Yeah.
That's
Yes,
true.
don't forget about the
yeah.
statues and the mushrooms. Yeah,
But not every plant, because not every plant can be sniffed.
it's
So-
the only
I
plants
know.
that when you go into the penumbral view, they glow. So you're sniffing glowing plants that have
You might
more,
see
'cause
a plant over in the corner. That one you can't sniff. That
but
one
you
must
can be on it.
I saw a plant and I was like, oh, okay, I can
That's why you
sniff
can't
this one.
sniff it because
And the
somebody
thing
peed
didn't
on
come
it.
up. I was like, it must be plastic. That's the only thing I could think of. It must
It
not be a
wasn't
real
real.
plant.
All right, so I'm gonna piss on it then instead of sniff it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lift your
I
leg
will-
I
up.
thought
will
there was going to
give
be one
this-
point where I was going to hike a leg.
Yeah, I was
like,
kind
I
of
got-
hoping for that.
I got
many
too
a
much
time.
spirit. I need to lift a leg and pee on this plant to release some of that spirit.
But see, that's the oddity of the game is that you get into these places like you go in those big old fights and then you get to a boss fight, and there's actually some skill needed to do the boss fight. Not an over the top amount, but a little bit. And it's like, well, wait a second. I've just been raging all this hot, and now you're going to make me be a skilled player a little bit. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, okay, so how are you getting me used to what skills to defeat boss? I mean, not that I asked that as a requirement as a gamer, but every game we played in our entire lives that are a really good game, you use skills appropriately. Now, I'm sure once you get to a certain point, Nick, you're probably still using the same 3, or Patrick's using the same 3 combos. But to me, it was like after like the second boss, I was like, this is just, it was tough. It was like this is silliness almost.
I mean,
Yeah,
it
the
is a
boss
hack and
fights
slash
is-
game.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very like I said earlier, it is the tropes of the late '90s, early '80s, early 2000s. It's a smash, it's a button masher. But I hit the B button more than any other button in this game, and that was just skipping dialogue. That's how crappy it is. But the game is it's a lot of outdated concepts and ideals and art styles. I mean, there's so much about this game that is just so outdated. The werewolf concept is really neat. It's something I don't think I've experienced in a game before, but it's still done in a way that's just awful. I would pay for this game if I found it on the $5 aisle at Walmart. Honestly, that's how bad this thing is, in my opinion, and it's bad.
You
It's
spend
rough.
more on
and it's
toilet
bad.
paper than that.
All
My
right.
goodness.
He spends
Yeah.
more on cheese than that.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's why I got the toilet paper.
Yeah, the
I would-
boss fights, like Russ was saying, the boss fights definitely do change the way you're going to fight, because the boss fights are a little bit more intricate than the regular fights. Bosses will fight a certain way or anything like that. One thing I will say is on your elder abilities, for me personally, the first one you should get is being able to heal from silver. That one is a must, because especially towards the end, you're going to get shot to crap with silver, and
Everybody's got a silver gun towards.
everyone's got
got
his silver bullets, and it sucks. So getting that ability is a priority, because basically how it works is you have your health bar. If you get shot with silver, the back end of your health bar gets filled up with a silver bar, and you can't get rid of it unless you get this ability, and that allows you, when you heal yourself, to get rid of some of your silver bar. I mean, to the point where if you healed yourself enough, you could get rid of the total silver bar altogether. So yeah, I mean, that's going to be your biggest downfall going further in, because everyone's got a silver bullet, and getting that elder ability is a must. So if you're going to pick one to first choose, that one I think is number one to choose as far as an ability.
Yep, because a lot of the snipers have silver bullets, and then as you get further on, some of the assault people have it, and they just pepper you with silver bullets because there's just too many enemies to dodge.
I think that's my biggest issue with hack and slash games is they put those elements in there like getting shot by silver bullets, but really you're meant to go in and hack and slash, so you're meant to get hit by those bullets. And so what do? On the back end, they give you an ability that you can get pretty much off the bat in order to combat that. It's like, what's the point then? Don't even put silver bullets in there. Or it just, I know it adds just a little bit of difficulty to it, but it doesn't like completely change that.
Well, that ability is towards the very bottom, which it does. I mean, you'll get through most of the game before you can get there. I mean, unless you spec just directly in that and go for it, because that's a 4 point ability, and you have to get. And I think it's in the general tab, so you have to at least put spec into, I think, 4 or 5 abilities before you can get to that one. So, I mean, if you put all your points into that spec, you could probably get there pretty quickly. But otherwise, if you start specking around and everything, it'll be probably towards the end of the game before you start specking into those
Right. It costs so
actual.
many points.
Yeah, because it costs so many points. And then you'll be like, well, I want to use my points for other things. That's what I did, which I found that there's certain skills in the game that I don't know, I found kind of useless. There's some of
Mhm.
the general ones were for like your crossbow and stuff. I find the crossbow to be pretty much useless unless you just want to have some fun by poking somebody in the head with it. But otherwise, it's pretty much a pointless weapon. And then being the wolf is fun too, but the not the werewolf, but just the wolf itself. But I found like even the camouflage setting and the other stuff that the skills that you could put into him it ultimately ended up being useless as well. So, if I were, and you can respec. So if you go up to the ancients that are in the forest or in the, when you later on you move to the desert, there's an ancient there as well. If you talk to either one of them, they have a reset skill button, which I think gives you all your points back, and then you can respec into what you want. So I think I would have, if I would have known all this about the different skills and stuff, I probably would have respect and just put points into things that I know that I wanted. That's I guess that's kind of a good thing in the game is that you really don't want to put all your points into everything. You want to kind of put your points into how you want to play the game. As Patrick played as an agile werewolf and I played as a heavy, and so I would want to spec my werewolf to be more in that heavy range and more of the heavy abilities and things that complement that. Whereas he would want to spec his werewolf into the more agile skill tree and the stuff that complements his. Um, so, there's a little bit of play with that. So I mean, they kind of have something going on here. This game does suck though. So they need a lot of work with it. But, you know, the kind of I guess the fundamentals somewhat are there for it. So, if they make a number two, they got a lot of work ahead of them, but they could potentially make a pretty cool game. It's just they got a lot of work because this game is not good.
Well, and I don't think maybe most people who play this don't know that this game is based off of a tabletop RPG. It's part of like the World of Darkness series
Yep,
tabletop
I was going to
games.
say that. Yeah, it's part of the world of
Yeah,
darkness.
so I mean, that's where it's probably getting most of its pull from as far as a user base. That those guys who played the tabletop RPG are probably going, well, I like the world that this is based off of, the World of Darkness series, so I'm probably going to try this and play it out. And I didn't hate it. I liked the combat from the different things. It did, like Nick said, it got repetitive, but I never felt that I was just over the combat because it's like Russ said, you go into a place and you turn into the werewolf and you just start slaughtering people, and there's blood and guts everywhere, and there's people ripped up, and you're like, okay, I just came in and ripped this place a new one, and then I walk out, I walk out King Dingaling, and you're just like, I'm good. I just killed everybody, and then you go into the next area and you do the same thing. It's just rinse repeat from one zone to the area, and I'm like, okay. Uh, if I probably beat the game, I might have felt differently. I might have gotten to a point where I felt that it was too much, but I hadn't gotten to that point yet.
I
So maybe
wonder
it's
if
just
I'm
because you beat
becoming
it.
a story snob. I wonder if that's what's happening to me in my old age or something. Like, I want a good story. I want some significance within it, I guess. I mean, I, I mean, like at the very beginning when they did the very beginning cutscene, I was like, okay, cool. Guy is our, guy is our friend. I was like, I'll let this thing go a little bit. I'll try this out. And then it just, I don't know, it was downhill after that. It was bad.
Yeah, I can understand that, and there's a fine line between that, right? I mean, you can have a game with a good story, and then you can have a game that's just all action, right? And I think this game would have probably benefited from more of the all action side, whereas little story, a lot of action,
Agreed.
right? It tried to be, it kind of tried to be a little bit of the extreme of both, and I think that's what hurt it. I think if it was just a little bit of story and a lot of action, it would have been really fun because I did enjoy the action more than the story. The story was like towards the end I started doing the same thing Shane did. I just beat through it because I already knew what was going on. It was an uninteresting story. I didn't care about the protagonist. I didn't care what was going on. You know, the only person I cared about was Ric Flair. And spoiler,
Woo!
Ric Flair dies. So again, right? Uh, so
But
it's yeah. I think if they focus more on the action than the story, this probably would have been better.
right.
Yep.
I would say, yeah. Yeah, the story is its weakest link in it, in my opinion. And it could
Oh,
have been better
there's
without story.
yeah, no, there's so many weak links. There's so many broken links. That game's just, I just, I can't, I don't want to hate on it because I don't hate it. I just like the ideal, but everything didn't work. Everything was just old and outdated, and they should have done better. Microsoft should have said, no, we're not letting you put this as a Series X title. It should have been, the Xbox blah blah blah.
Well, Microsoft doesn't dictate that. They just say,
Right.
you
It,
develop,
it was on
here's your
everything,
developer
so-
kit.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
should have said, no, you can't call this an Xbox Series X
The
game.
only person that said no was Switch, and it was probably the publisher saying we're not putting it on Switch.
The one time Nintendo makes a right decision after
And it
40
probably wasn't
cooking
Nintendo.
mamas.
The
No.
publisher said, we're not putting this on Switch.
Yeah.
No.
We don't
Yeah.
need to develop to the Switch.
Yeah, yes, you needed to.
Right. For me, this is a $30 buy. I would buy this game for $30. I would not buy it for $50. I don't think it has enough gameplay in it for $50, and I don't think there's enough substance for $50. To me, it's a $30 buy.
$29.99.
For me, it's 29. So $30 for both of you. For me, it's a $20 game. $20, you get your most out of it. I mean, yeah, $20 game. That I would buy
How
it
much-
for $20.
Before we go though, Nick, how much gameplay did you put into it? I mean, how much? You said you finished it, so how much?
You said it was
time did
long,
you put
too.
in?
It was longer than it needed to be. That's one thing that was bad about it. There were several times
So-
during this game where I thought, "Oh, this is the end."
Nick
then
with
it's
like,
subtle jabs all night.
No, and then I got to another part. And I was like, "Oh, this is the end." No, and then it was finally the end. I was like, "About time." I mean, this game, every mission is incredibly long. Not with side missions and regular, and if you did side missions and the main story, you're probably looking at maybe 20 hours
Oh,
into this game for this game. I mean, it's that's if you include side missions. If you don't, maybe a little less than that. But I mean, like the missions go on and on
Yeah, they do.
and on and on, and it's like, oh my gosh, and the story goes on, and it's like, you know, and it's not like things are changing where something abruptly happens. It's like this game is where they're just moving the goalpost every
Yeah.
single time. Like you're getting to the end, and then the main bad guy's like, "Nope, I'm over here now," and you're like, "Okay, I gotta go over there now." You
Your
know, because
princess is in another castle.
yes.
basically how this game works is you start out in Washington State Forest, and you do this whole thing where you go to the training center and these different areas, and you fight Tank Girl. I don't know why they call her Tank Girl and make a big deal about her, because you only see her twice, and you only fight her once, and then you kill her, and then that's it. And it's like, okay, bye.
Not
But they
Tank
talk about her
Girl.
like she's like, oh, she's been killing us and fighting us for years, and then you fight her and she's dead and it's over. So anyway, and then after that's all done, said and done, and you're done with Washington State, well then you thought, okay, this is where it's going to take place, and now we're finished because at the last mission there, you go and you meet the president of Enron, and you're like, oh, this is the end. Well, no, it's not the
Enron.
end. He steals your daughter, and then they go to Nevada. Now you're going to Nevada. Now there's another CERN or, tree huggers out there called the Red Talon, and then you got to do all that crap, and it's basically the same as the wilderness, but now you're in the desert. And then you go to this compound and do all this crap, and then that finally ends, and you get to the very top of the thing, and you're like, oh, this is the end. And then it's like, no, now we're at an oil rig.
Oh,
So
sweet
then
Jesus.
you go to the oil rig, and then that's where the game ends after you do the oil rig. Which the oil rig's not too long, but getting there is just like, this should have ended like 20 minutes ago, or like 20 hours ago, because I'm pretty sure the story was done. But
So Nick, because of that extra 10, 20 hours that you didn't want, you don't think it was worth $10 more?
no, 20
Uh,
bucks I would have been
I mean,
okay with it.
Nick,
But
all I did was ask you how long you put into the game. My
Too
gosh,
long.
man. Like, that was like. By the way, listeners, there's a rant that turns into a spoiler. Thank you very
somewhat.
much.
If anybody's
You ain't
playing this
missing
game,
much.
and,
Yeah.
you ain't missing much. There is no spoilers here. The game sucks.
That's the
That's a spoiler.
I like
Sorry.
it.
Okay, so overall we've got Shane at $5.
$5
Walmart
Walmart bargain bin.
bin, and we got Nick at 20, and me and Patrick are at 30. That's pretty interesting.
I can't believe you gave it 30, Russ. I thought you would be at the dollar store with that thing.
No, I mean I disliked it a lot, but they put a decent effort in it. Like Patrick said, the hack and slash part of it, like it may stay installed just long enough for me to continue to kind of like play a mission, and then 3 weeks later play the mission, and then 3 weeks, just because, like, I don't know, maybe I trip on one of the stairs coming up to the apartment and I'm mad and angry. I want to go slash a whole bunch of people up and take my rage out on it or something. I mean,
Better than the mall.
So $30. I mean, that's cheaper than going to a counselor. So I'll take it.
That's your counseling. The werewolf game is your counseling.
Werewolf counseling.
How do you?
I will say one thing about this game, and in my part, they use the same song for the entirety of the entire game.
Oh, that was tough.
That tune that you've heard playing the game, that never changes. It's the same thing, no matter where you go. Same
Yep.
one.
Yeah, it's
I'm
the
like-
number one hits
They
at the
had some
refinery.
like hard, heavy metal at the beginning. I'm like, oh, cool. Then when you play the game, it's like doom, doom, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, and that's it.
And
the
that is-
entire thing.
That's probably
You're
one of my
like-
biggest problems with it. It tries to be edgy. It's like, you weren't edgy 20 years ago.
I'd rather have
Ugh.
when you fight as a werewolf, I'd rather have the hard, heavy metal that was at the beginning of the game, like in the logo screen. I'd rather have that play during that part. That would have been cool. But during that part, it's just like, I don't know, whatever their fight music is, which is you could barely hear because you're just fighting each other. So the sound effects are higher than the music, so you just hear this like faint sound. But when you're playing the game, otherwise, it's the same tune throughout the entire, even through cutscenes, it's the same tune.
All right, here's an ideal for DLC. Every heavy attack,
More music.
you hear Ric Flair go, woo!
And I was disappointed.
want that.
It wasn't Win Woo. That was definitely Ric Flair.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, what's his name? Rodko? Rodko is Ric Flair.
Yeah, Rodko
Ric
is
Flair.
Ric Flair. Don't let Rick know. He'll be suing.
I think
Well,
he's dead.
Is he dead?
I'm pretty sure Ric Flair.
Yeah, I don't
passed
think
away.
Ric Flair is
Yes,
alive.
he passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, he passed
So-
away.
He was reincarnated in this game.
Ric Flair reincarnated as Rodko.
As a plant sniffing, whiskey drinking,
One-eyed werewolf.
camouflaged, better pressed, even though it's not even pressed shirt than I'd ever wear. I mean,
That does not
that's not
matter.
bad. The graphics were so bad that it looked like it was perfectly pressed with it was.
It was hot glued to his tits.
I don't know that I can quite get that.
All their clothing. All their clothing.
I just want to. You know what? I should not have worn a shirt. I should have showed our listeners that, hey, this is how that stuff looks, because it's just.
I'll just superimpose a picture over Russ's picture of him.
Yeah.
And I had to look this up, but the Ric Flair is still alive. He's 71.
Oh, I thought he died of cancer.
I thought he died too. Well, good.
No, I think the last one was Roddy
alive.
Piper.
What are those things?
Right.
What are those things called? Like I'm
The
your
Mandela
father?
effect?
Yeah, you got the Mandela effect.
Yeah, he's still alive. He's
Well,
he's
maybe
How
he
do
was
you
in
know
this
when
game. I
Rick-
didn't see his name in the credits, but hell, he may have been there. I don't know.
How do you know when Ric Flair is haunting your house? Woo!
he's
Oh,
still
gosh.
alive. He's haunting your house.
He's haunting my Xbox.
Well, with that joke, I'm gonna go back to the TARDIS. I think.
All right. Well,
Well,
anybody else got anything they want to add? I mean, I'm a $30 buy. I enjoyed it that much for $30.
you see it at the bargain bin at Walmart. Go $5. Then if they'll
You'll
take
see.
$10 off.
You'll see Shane in that bargain bin, head first, with his feet sticking out, trying to get the game.
It's at the bottom.
Hey, I did that for the Goonies.
All right. Well, we hope you guys like the new format and the videos. Let us know in the comments what you think of the new format and the videos, and what you might like to see from us. If you'd like to see us review a specific game or a specific topic, let us know. We'd be glad to check it out and do a cast on it. So until the next time, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope to catch you in the next one.